We just got it posted now. So we resent that agenda out to the interested party list, and the revised link is posted to the agenda on our website. So I think we could probably go ahead and get started now. I'll just repost that link again here in the chat. So it's publicly available where it is located on the Parks District website. So yeah, I think we go ahead and start the public portion of the meeting. And again, we apologize for those technical difficulties and the broken Zoom link, but I think we are now good to go.
Okay, well, great. So, and once again, we will give everyone the opportunity to speak that wants to. If they come in late, we'll have a public comment at the towards the end of the meeting. So welcome everyone to the June 8th meeting of the Hayward Area Shoreline Planning Agency. We're meeting today in accordance with Governor Newsom's emergency actions and AB 361, which amended some of those actions, which allows for hybrid meetings. We are all of the trustees, and well, everyone today is meeting via Zoom, but we welcome public comment. And John, I was wondering if you could explain to folks how members of the public can participate in this meeting.
Sure. So I'll just go ahead and read from the agenda what the public comment process is to submit any public comments. So one, you could send an email to jholder@eastbayparks.org by noon, the day of the meeting. And we did not receive any public comments over email for this meeting. The other method of submitting public comments is live via the Zoom meeting. So if you'd like to make a live public comment during the meeting, you log into the posted link. That revised link on the website is the appropriate Zoom link. Comments received during the meeting and up until the public comment period on the relevant agenda item will be provided in writing to the HASPA Board of Trustees, and all comments received by the close of the public comment period will be available after the meeting as well. If you have any questions on how to submit these comments, or if you have any issues, please feel free to contact me, John Holder, at jholder@eastbayparks.org. My contact information is listed on the agenda. And then for the live meeting, we'll have public comment period. So just raise your hand or press *6 during the public comment period to submit those comments.
All right, thank you, John. So, and let's start with the roll call. John, were you going to do that?
Yeah, so I will just go ahead and start with the roll call. And I'll go ahead and start with you, Director Waspy.
Here.
To say present. Director Hodges.
Here.
And Director Marquez.
Present.
All right, thank you. And so our first item of business is the approval of the minutes from the House meeting held on April 14th, 2022. Does anyone have any corrections, comments, or anything to say about the minutes? And if there are none, can I get a motion to approve them?
Actually, Trustee Waspy, it's Brian Lasker with Hard. I'm noticing in the minutes that I'm listed as staff and I should be part of the TAC.
Oh, okay. Duly noted.
Thank you.
Someone will record that, I hope. Or I'm positive they will do that. Okay, would anyone like to suggest we approve these minutes with that one change?
Chair, I'm happy to move the item, the adoption of the minutes with that one clarification.
And I'll second.
We have a motion by Trustee Marquez and a second by Trustee Hodges. Any further discussion? Hearing none. John, will you do a roll call again?
Yes. So another roll call just to confirm you're all present.
No,
Or-
you know, I think
sorry.
based on all this, anytime there's a remote meeting, you have to call someone's name based on maybe they can't identify who's speaking. So I think they ask for a roll call on any approval or any recommendation or any resolution or thing like that. So it's a formality that we have to do. So we would be voting
Okay.
now on whether to approve the minutes of the April 14th or, yeah, April
Okay.
14th meeting.
Sorry, I was cut out for a second. You need to do the roll call, or do you need to do a motion to approve the minutes?
We have a motion and a second. Now we need a roll call vote. And if you would
Okay.
help us out.
Sure. Director Waspy,
Aye.
Director Hodges,
Aye.
and Director Marquez.
Aye.
All right, the minutes are approved unanimously. Okay, we move now to public comments. Are there any members of the public here or anybody entered meeting?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at the moment.
Okay, like we said, we'll ask again at the end of the meeting to catch anybody that we miss. So our next item is introduction of trustees and future trustees. This is an interesting deal. We're having new members here for the first time in a while. So, this might be a little bit of a formality, but why don't we, as the three trustees, introduce ourselves? I don't know, say anything you like. One question I'd like to ask is who you are. Tell us a little bit about yourself, not too long, but let me know if you guys hold meetings in person. Director or Trustee Marquez, we go first.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Welcome. It's good to see all of you virtually. My name is Elisa Marquez. I serve on the Hayward City Council, lifelong resident of the city of Hayward, and all of our committee meetings are virtual. Our council meetings are hybrid at this time. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go. I'm Director Hodges, Paul Hodges. I've been on the board for 16 years now, and we are currently live at our board meetings, and some of our ad hoc and stuff, we're continuing to do those remotely.
All right, and I'm Dennis Waspy. I represent the East Bay Regional Park District. I have been with the East Bay Regional Park District for about 40 years, not as a board member, but as a worker. I was also on HARD, and I've been intimately involved with the Hayward Shoreline for many, many years. And now we'll put a couple of you on the spot. So we have some very new members, and we're really happy that you're on board. And I guess Rita Duncan from Oraloma Sanitary District, welcome. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your agency?
Okay, good afternoon. Yes, I am Rita Duncan, and I've been on the Oraloma Sanitary District Board for about 6 years. Currently, I'm the president. I also am a commissioner for the East Bay Dischargers Authority, and I live in the Fairview unincorporated community. And I'm excited about our district joining this great cause, to protect and leverage our beautiful shoreline. And all of our meetings, ad hoc and committee meetings, are virtual.
All right, and we're very happy and excited to have Oraloma on board also. Thank you, Rita. And from the Alameda County Mosquito Abatement District, it's Eric Henschke, right?
That's right, yeah. Eric Henschke, I'm Newark's representative on the board and for Alameda County Mosquitoes, and been on it for about 6 years also, and enjoyed myself there. I work with Elisa on that group and Erica also on that group. It's a pleasure to be here with you all, and hope we can have some fun. All of our meetings have been mixed. Our last meeting was hybrid, and this meeting coming up tonight, right after this meeting, is going to be completely virtual. So.
All right, well, once again, welcome. I like in 5 squares up here. I'd much rather see you all in person, but hopefully we'll do that soon.
Director Waspy, I do have a quick clarification, just with the extension of the current JPA from our last meeting. These are future members that'll be included. I just wanted to state that for the record. But we're extremely thrilled to have them here, and especially for this term sheet discussion we're about to have today.
Well, I understand it's what is it, July of 2023, that the onboarding is going to take place. But we welcome you here and we're glad you're here, and we'll show you the secret handshake next year. So anyway, our next item is the background of the JPA expansion efforts and our timeline. And I think either John or Devin is going to do that for the representing the East Bay Regional Park District.
Correct. I will be going through a couple slides, and I'll be quick just because we did have that delay at the beginning. Just wanted to confirm, can everybody hear me all right and see my screen?
Yep.
Great. So I just wanted to give a quick background on the current governance of HASPA and why we're here today to discuss the term sheet. So as we all know, the current JPA consists of the East Bay Regional Park District, the City of Hayward, and the Hayward Area Park and Recreation District, or HARD, was established in 1970 and has been updated at various points throughout the years. But back in 2019, the mission of the JPA was kind of directed to have an emphasis on sea level rise adaptation. And then in that spirit, HASPA did complete the Shoreline Master Plan in 2021. So this is the HASPA area boundary with ownership. So I kind of wanted to include this mainly so we have it for our discussion as we discuss the term sheet and some items in the term sheet. So as you can see, the three current members of the JPA are kind of the biggest land managing or land owning agencies in the HASPA boundaries. And just a brief background on the most recent timeline of the JPA expansion, just to kind of refresh our memories. January 1st, 2021, HASPA voted to extend the JPA for 1 year to complete the Shoreline Adaptation Master Plan, which was then completed. January 1, 2022, extended the JPA for 6 months to allow the Park District to take over the coordinating authority for HASPA, and then also continue these expansion efforts, which kind of got us where we are today. And as a reminder, the most recent executed JPA expires on June 30th, but then on April 14th, 2022, the HASPA board extended the current JPA for a year. So from the expiry of that June 30th JPA agreement, we'll have 1 year to complete the update of the JPA agreement. So that is the basic timeline we are on. And as I mentioned, the current board and TAC members, the Park District, City of Hayward, and HARD make up the current board of trustees. The TAC are staff representatives of the trustee agencies, and then additionally, the East Bay Discharges Authority, Alameda County Mosquito Abatement District, Orloma Sanitary District, Caltrans, Capital Corridor, Bay Trail, and the Alameda County Flood Control District. And as a result of the expansion efforts and agency coordination that staff and the board and the TAC has conducted over the past year or so, the proposed board and TAC members would change, and the board would include or would be expanded to include the Orloma Sanitary District and the Alameda County Mosquito Abatement District. And the TAC at this time would consist of the same members as it did. So that's where we are in terms of membership. Just a few quick points. Since HASPA expansion efforts began, the TAC has been working hard on developing a draft term sheet to guide the future JPA agreement development or update. And what does the term sheet actually do? What it does, it contains guidance for aligning HASPA agency priorities. It improves the efficiency, or it intends to improve the efficiency of the JPA and update kind of outdated language in that original JPA agreement, and then also expand membership to include those aforementioned agencies. And what it does not do is recommend any significant changes to the JPA in terms of structure. And over the past couple months, the kind of sentiment on the TAC and in this effort has been very collaborative, and we've all really supported each other. And as we know, a lot of the mission and priorities are easily aligned, and the goal is to kind of improve the efficiency of the JPA so that we can better implement those master plan projects. And that's kind of the primary goal of the JPA update. And expanded membership is one of the best ways to do that. So for a little bit more background, I want to invite Jackie Zipkin from the East Bay Discharges Authority to share their experience with their recent JPA update. So I can go ahead and let Jackie share her screen, or Jackie, if you'd like, I can also just bring up your slides and click through them. So whatever you prefer.
I will go ahead and bring them up if that works for you.
That works.
Okay. Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Seeing nodding heads. Okay. Good evening or afternoon, evening, trustees. Thank you to John and to all of you for inviting me to share a little bit about EBDA's JPA renewal process. And the context for this is that a JPA renewal or reissuance is not something that happens every day. And since EBDA had recent experience with this, we've, as a technical advisory committee, have been sort of using some of the lessons learned and approaches from the EBDA renewal process as staff has approached the HASPA JPA renewal. And so we thought it would be helpful to share just very briefly what EBDA's process was, as that informs the HASPA process, and then hopefully get into the meat of the HASPA content. But just for background, I think most of you are familiar, but EBDA is a joint powers authority that's responsible for discharging treated wastewater to San Francisco Bay, and our membership overlaps with the HASPA membership. Our members of the city of San Leandro, Orloma Sanitary District, and as you heard, Director Duncan represents Orloma on our commission, Castro Valley Sanitary District, City of Hayward, which is represented by Councilmember Andrews, and then Union Sanitary District. So we had a JPA that was set to expire on January 1st, 2020. It was originally adopted in 1974, so kind of the same era as HASPA's JPA, and it was renewed and extended a few times. But then we wanted to take the opportunity of its expiration in 2020 to do a little bit of reflection and revamping. So this is the process that we undertook. And I should also say, for context, EBDA's JPA was much more complicated than I think the HASPA JPA, or my hope is that the HASPA JPA renewal process will be. So I don't want to scare you with this timeline or these steps. EBDA has a $5 million operating budget, and so there was natural disagreements about how to allocate those responsibilities. The dollars that we're talking about for HASPA are significantly lower, and there's just an overall collaborative spirit. So want to set that as a tone. But in terms of sharing this, the main thing I wanted to share is that we went through a process of using a term sheet, and that's really where the concept of the term sheet came from for this process, to get everyone, both at the staff level and the elected level, on the same page about the key terms. And so we held a series of workshops with our elected commission in early 2019. We reached conceptual agreement on those business terms, and we drafted a term sheet, which in our case, each individual agency then adopted that term sheet so that we knew that we had the full boards of each member agency aligned with our terms. And we did all that before we handed it over to the attorneys. And I'll talk a little bit about our drafting process in a moment, but we found it really helpful to get alignment on the concepts before we got into the legal language. And so that's why the lesson we learned was that was a helpful process and one that HASPA could take advantage of as well. That greatly sped up the process of actually drafting the JPA revisions. And then we were able to get the ultimate agreement approved by all of our governing bodies within the timeline that we had outlined before our expiration. We did extend for 6 months to give ourselves a little bit more time, similar to what HASPA has done here, in extending by a year to allow this process to continue. And then in terms of what our process was, once we had that adopted term sheet, we used an outside counsel to lead the drafting process. That way they were neutral, but they did consult with the agency counsel from each member. The base document was the existing JPA, and they, similar to what John was just describing, focused on removing references to outdated or moot language that was from, the 1970s. They incorporated the provisions of the term sheet, and they looked for any other tweaks that were needed to comply with the Joint Powers Authority Act to make sure that our JPA would withstand scrutiny for the subsequent 20 years, which is what we adopted it for. So that's really all I wanted to share, just for context about our process, that in case it's helpful moving forward with this process. But I'm happy to answer any questions that the trustees or future trustees may have. I see Trustee Marquez has a hand up.
Thank you. Thank you for the overview. I'm sorry, Chair, is it okay if I go?
No, go right ahead. Yes.
Thank you. So thank you for the overview. Just a couple questions for clarification. You mentioned selecting outside counsel. Was there an ad hoc committee, or how was that counsel selected?
Good question. There was an ad hoc committee of the commission. We didn't issue an RFP, but we did solicit proposals from several law firms that had been recommended for these types of tasks. And the ad hoc committee assisted with the selection of one of those law firms.
Okay. And on ABDA, do you only have elected members sitting on your body?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So the way our commission is structured, it's one representative on the commission from each elected body. And then similar to the structure that HASPA has, we have what we call a MAC, or a manager's advisory committee. That's the staff level working group.
Okay, so I would just, this is no criticism to you, because obviously you have your role, but just for our reference point for this body, just want to encourage us to continue to say elected or appointed, because we are welcoming Alameda County Mosquito Abatement District, and not every member on that body is elected, and their input is extremely valuable. So just, I know this is a separate issue, but just want to encourage us to be mindful of that. You provided the timeline, and you said the JPA was extended for 20 years. Were there recommendations for shorter or longer time range, or was that just part of the term sheet in terms of the timeline?
Yeah, that was part of the term sheet, and it was significantly debated in our term sheet process. We talked about a couple of different options. We talked about having it be indefinite, and not actually having to renew it, and for a variety of reasons that related to liability for the infrastructure that ABDA owns, we decided that 20 years was an appropriate timeline to sort of force reevaluation of the JPA. But that was a negotiated item that was part of the term sheet.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for being here and for sharing this with us. It's very helpful. Thank you.
Any other
My pleasure.
trustee comments? Any public questions, comments? Yeah, thank you, Jackie, very much. You had these, I don't have any questions specifically of you, but you've raised a number of questions that I have when we get into our discussion. I never even thought of the term of the JP of 20 years. That's well, yeah, EBDA is going to be here forever. And hopefully HASPA will be and doing good work. But and thank you, Alyssa, for that reminding us that we do have appointed members now, and that's a very good point. We need to keep it that way. And boy, we'll wrestle with this in the next section about an outside counsel. Well, I won't say my personal opinions till after that, but thank you, Jackie, for your excellent presentation, and wish you all well at EBDA.
Thank you.
Please stay with us and join us if you'd like, because we could probably use some advice. So our next item is the draft HASPA JPA term sheet that you've all received, and we've talked about this. I think Trustee Marquez brought it up at our last meeting, said, hey, we got to get together before we approve this thing. Let's talk it over. Let's have a little work session here and figure out what we're going to do. So I think you all have the draft term sheet. I had one from April 2022, and we've got a later one that's now June 8th with a couple of additions. So I don't know. Oh, it says Park District's going to facilitate this. Good, John, go ahead.
Thanks, Director Waspy. And I just have a few more slides with some basic points on the term sheet to kind of guide the discussion, but we did want to make this kind of just an open discussion on that term sheet on the most recent version included in the agenda packet. So I'll just go through these slides real quick and share my screen again, just to kind of kick off that discussion. All right, can everyone see my screen all right? So as I mentioned earlier, there were multiple drafts circulated and discussed amongst the TAC members. So this has been really an ongoing process. So most TAC staff were directly involved in developing this term sheet. And there were we've held a number of meetings. We meet monthly, and over the past couple months, this has been kind of the primary item of discussion. And most of the TAC agencies and most of the trustee agencies have also been able to review this with other staff within their agencies as well. So this draft included in the agenda packet was shared with trustees prior to today's meeting. And the basic updates to the sections of the current JPA agreement include updates or revisions to purpose and mission of the JPA, the term of the JPA, the governance of the JPA, the powers, and finance. So these are kind of where the major changes or updates are, but as I alluded to earlier, it's really just to improve kind of the efficiency of the JPA. And a couple other items to consider. At the moment, no other agencies besides HARD, the Park District, and the City of Hayward have agreed to take on that coordinating authority role. A lot of that is based on staff capacity, but this is something that can be worked out kind of moving forward as well. As one of the items we discussed, and I think was mentioned in the term sheet, was to hire a consultant to kind of facilitate that coordinating authority role in the future. So that's something to consider. Currently, TAC members do not pay dues. That's more of an ad hoc committee. And staff is looking for input on the draft term sheet, and we can bring a more final version to the July meeting. So that's kind of some of the basic items that we just wanted to kick off the discussion with. And then we have a series of discussion points that staff is kind of looking for the trustees to give some guidance on. And I could just go through these briefly, and we could always go back to them during the discussion. So discussion point 1 is in regards to the dues that are paid. So as I mentioned, the TAC members do not pay any dues currently. So we wanted to get the trustees' thoughts on TAC dues to support future HASPA project implementation, such as that consultant. And the suggested level, and this can obviously change, was 6,000 for TAC members. That's half of what trustee agencies pay annually in dues. So the trustee agencies pay 12,000, and a suggested level for TAC dues would be 6,000. And then for each discussion point, we put an outcome. So basically just either the guidance we're looking for from the Board of Trustees. So for that item, we're just looking on general direction and thoughts on either requiring dues for the TAC or not requiring dues, and then what the level of those dues might be appropriate. And discussion point 2 is to add language to allow for flexibility in changing the HASPA boundary. And that HASPA boundary is the one identified in the Shoreline Adaptation Master Plan, which I shared earlier. And the outcome is board direction on including language within the JPA to change the HASPA boundary. We're not requesting or suggesting that the HASPA boundary is changed today, but just that the JPA clarifies and provides language that allows that to happen. Should another agency express interest, or should it make sense to include other agencies outside of the current boundary in project implementation? Discussion point 3. So the current JPA provides language on requirement of an audit annually of HASPA. And this might be something that would require a more, council's opinion, because it is a JPA under state law. So that staff would like some direction on just basic financial management, whether moving forward, is it appropriate to still have that audit language in the JPA agreement, or just a general financial statement presented to the Board of Trustees annually, if that might suffice. Discussion point 4 is regarding the mission and vision statement. So currently the mission of the JPA is focused on sea level rise, and we thought that it might be good to include language that allows for a focus on broader adaptation planning, broader climate adaptation planning, outside of just sea level rise. So just making the mission and the vision of the JPA a bit more broad. So as I mentioned, based on today's feedback and discussion, staff can provide a more final version of the term sheet in July, either for continued revision or adoption. And at the July meeting, we'll certainly include a discussion item on JPA update needs to kind of continue that more nuanced discussion of hiring an outside counsel or how the actual JPA would be updated. So that's all the slides I have, and with the remaining time, I think it'd be great to delve into discussion.
Great. So let's start. Well, let's start by, does anyone have any questions about how this document was written, who it was written by, and how the process was done? Any trustees have any comment on that?
No, but I hope we get PowerPoint copies of what's been said today, because not all of it aligns with the agenda we have.
That's a good point. I think we can get those out to you. We can email those out. I think that's a simple thing to do. I guess if no one else has, I have a question is, so I'm really happy and I like the work product that you guys put out, and I think this is a wonderful document. I was just wondering if, having been here for so darn long in this committee and having known what HASPA was all about in the old days, did we ever engage the community in this, or was the feeling that we can kind of do it on our own? And I don't know if that's a question or a comment or what.
I think I could go ahead and provide some insight on that. I think in terms of community engagement, I mean, most of or all the HASPA meetings are public, obviously, so there's that opportunity. And I wasn't around then, but when the master plan process was happening, I think there was quite a bit of community engagement as part of that effort. But outside of that, and you know, other members of the TAC might have more knowledge of this. I think that has been the extent of community engagement. And in terms of the JPA update, we do have that year extension. So there is room for kind of increased community engagement.
All right. And then I guess, and I know we have these four tasks or 4 proposals that we should discuss, but I was wondering if any members have any, and you know, Rita and Eric, please feel free to participate in this, and members of the public too, if you're willing to do that. We have this draft document in front of us, and I think it's very good, the term sheet. Do any trustees or any members of the public, or anyone for that matter, have any comment on the draft proposal itself, the term sheet?
Now we got to start somewhere.
I had my hand up, but I can wait and let Alicia go first.
No, go ahead, Rita.
Well, I had a lot of questions, unfortunately. It would be nice to have those points that we're supposed to be discussing. But I guess the first question that I have is around the adaptation of the term sheet to include things other than you know, what's happening to my words, the sea rise, you know, protecting the sea rise. What other things was the trustees thinking about broadening that, you know, adapting that definition of the mission? What were you guys, when you were discussing or pointing out?
It looks like, sorry, Director Rossby, Taylor Richard from the City of Hayward has her hand up, and I think she might have a comment on this specific subject.
Yeah, I can provide some context to that point. When we adopted the Shoreline Adaptation Master Plan, our city council asked if we looked at like extreme heat for recreation and, you know, like flash floods from increase of storm events. And the master plan really just looked at sea level rise. It obviously took into account flooding. So those are kind of the other climate adaptation features that we could include in our vision.
Okay, that makes sense. And then my other 2 questions are concerning what work is to be done by the TAC team? What are you envisioning for that?
Sorry, so the question is, what work does the Technical Advisory Committee?
Yeah, what is the expectation? And the reason I'm asking that question is in relationship to, I think what the $6,000 dues that you're requiring, and how does that balance out? If we're requiring them to do work, you know, for the JPA, I'm just wanted to get an idea of what kind of work they would be performing for us.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so the current chair of the Technical Advisory Committee is the Park District. So historically it's, and other members of the TAC can obviously chime in here. We convene meetings to either discuss master plan projects, do kind of more administrative duties such as a term sheet development. And I think moving forward, those duties would stay the same. The TAC I think the monthly meetings has really helped in terms of kind of pushing this expansion effort forward. But I think the idea behind the dues for TAC members, and again, this is just suggested, would be to help fund a consultant to be the coordinating authority for HASPA to facilitate the trustee meetings. So really the TAC is just a kind of a staff advisory group.
And so the fees that we would be requiring would be to just help the administrative cost going forward. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that the intent of that, and other TAC members can chime in here, and I see Brian and Taylor both have their hands raised, but would be just to have more funding to allow for higher consultants basically in the future.
Okay, and then I guess my last question is around the meetings for the trustees. You know, what is expected of me, and how? And I see that you've been meeting quarterly, but I'm trying to get a handle on, you know, what is the goal? What is, when I say the goal, you know, if we're saying that TAC is going to be working on the project, what is our role? Is it just a guidance role? I'm trying to get clarity on how I can bring value to this process.
John, you want me to answer that or try to answer it?
Yeah, please do.
And then fellow trustees fill in. You know, Rita, this started off, I think this whole Hayward Shoreline Planning Agency evolved in the 70s, like we talked about. It was people that wanted to preserve the refuge, the wildlife refuge. Don Edwards Wildlife Refuge came into being. There were some real pioneers and environmentalists that were birders and liked the shoreline, loved the shoreline, saw what was happening to the shoreline all over the San Francisco Bay and wanted to preserve it. So they worked really, really hard to preserve it. And it's kind of funny when you think of it, they were preserving it mostly from development and pollution that was occurring from developed areas. And now, as we're talking about today, I think it's kind of, well, I don't know, it's not funny, but it's interesting. Now we're protecting the shoreline from nature itself, tides and sea level rise and climate adaptation. So, you know, I personally think, and I'll trust hopefully my other trustees will chime in. You know, you're the governance part of it. So what we have is we've preserved lots of land. We've cooperated with the cities and the sanitary districts and everybody else. People know us, and we're working to protect the shoreline. Now we have a giant foe, which is tides every day and climate adaptation. And so we're trying to deal with that. And what we did was based on having this JPA, that it was organized and had a plan, which was articulated through the TAC and approved by our local governments, the 3 governments that were involved in it, and the elected people that approved it. We were able to get almost a $500,000 grant to do a master plan. So we have this wonderful, beautiful shoreline master plan, and it's a beautiful document. It's a scary document, and but great people from many different areas of background and scientific background and restoration and project management and things like that. And then obviously looking at Orloma and their horizontal levee and the great things you've done, they combined all that stuff and said, here's how we're going to try to protect this shoreline from what we feel is an inevitability of climate change and sea level rise. And so we've got this document now. And by the way, they put a price tag on it, which was, I think, a little bit over $1 billion. And, you know, we're talking about 6 miles of shoreline in Hayward, and there's 535 miles of shoreline around the San Francisco Bay, not including the whole California coastal shoreline. So we got a lot of money to figure out and get or obtain. And that's, you know, working with grants, things like that. But what I think, you know, our role as trustees, we're elected, we represent local governments in this area. And so with a beautiful master plan like we have, and lots of granting agencies in the San Francisco Bay. The TAC comes up with great ideas. The master plan is a great idea. We use our technical skills and abilities or abilities as electeds to make this work, get grants, approve getting grants, get our cities to get on board, to get our sanitary districts to get on board, our mosquito abatement districts and our recreation park districts to get on board. So we're the governance end of it. And I know it's not as technical and as hard, and that's why we meet quarterly. We're kind of, well, in my opinion, once we get this new JPA started, I think our focus is now going to be just getting grants, doing these projects. I don't know if that was enough, and a good enough explanation, or told you
No,
what you needed, but anybody else want to add in?
Yeah, I'd like to, Dennis. You really covered quite a bit of that. But by one reason we need more members to be with us is it gives us a much louder voice for getting the grants. And I have a feeling that San Francisco Bay Restoration Authority is going to become somewhat the regulatory authority in the future. So we need to look bigger and sound louder. It's going to be really important. The other thing I think on the mission statement we need to do is work together to simplify the permitting procedure for doing any work on the shoreline. We need it shortened and a lot simpler than what we have. I wish Mark Taylor was here to go through the list of agencies. I believe he said at one time it's like 12 or 15 agencies. You got to jump hoops to get anything done. So we need to work together on that also. But other than that, I think you covered everything else, that why we're here and what we're planning to do in the future.
Okay, and thank you both for that response. And the reason for my question is that I'm, serving as the trustee or the temporary trustee until we become a member. But if I don't particularly continue with the role, I want to be able to share it with my other board members, what the requirements are, what the responsibilities, what are the time requirements, of us being a trustee on HASPA. And so I just wanted to get some understanding of, what we would be doing. And you're saying governance, and it's governance around the projects that currently have been identified in the HASPA master plan. Is that correct? And then I'm sure that would be expanded based on whatever the TAC puts forth to the, to the trustees to approve or to implement. Am I understanding that?
Yes, I think you're correct. I think you're absolutely correct. And maybe I think you proposed a very good idea. Maybe in our term sheet here, we list governments and we talk about how many trustees we're going to have, where they're going to be from,
Right.
And what they're going to do. But maybe we need to really define the tasks and the commitment and what we really expect. And I think that's an excellent idea, and we should probably include that.
And
I don't think it would be that hard.
Right. And I don't think that you guys have, I don't mean to be judging, have really outlined the benefits as well as it could be. You haven't, I think that's kind of been our hesitancy is, okay, so what are we getting out of this? And I don't mean to be negative about it, but a little bit better PR, and that would probably bring more people or more stakeholders into the process, because it's wonderful to be able to protect our shoreline and to provide an environment for the residents to enjoy it, and period. I'll just say that. and so for me, it's like, okay, so when I go back and report to my fellow directors, what am I going to say? And so that's That was my question.
Can I chime in, Chair?
Please do.
Thank you. So thank you, Rita, for that comments. I do agree with you. I think we need to do a little bit better job at starting and leading with the why this is important. And I think the biggest takeaway for me personally in expanding the JPA is, we need to expand expertise, bandwidth, capacity.
Yeah.
Our shared interest is the shoreline. We all have from our respective organizations why we want to protect it. So that is the common goal. That's what brings us together. But in order for the actual plan to be implemented effectively, we need strength in numbers. We need to partner with the agencies that are directly impacted by sea level rising. So maybe we could just, for future reference, start a presentation with the why. And I do think this is a fluid process. I think a lot of us are hesitant to respond to all these questions because we definitely don't want to scare people away. This is a huge ask. I think everyone is overcommitted at this point. COVID has had its pro and cons, but unfortunately, I do feel like we're actually adding more to our plate because of the virtual meetings, the capacity. We tend to just stack on more and more Zooms. So for me, what I would like to see is just very open conversation, people being clear on their capacity. One thing I haven't heard brought up in a very long time, I know that I served as former council member Al Mendel's alternate. I don't even know who my alternate is. So that's something we're going to have to talk about. It's really important for these meetings to be efficient and productive, that we do identify not only the governing members, but also who's going to serve as their alternate so that the work continues to be carried on. With respect to the membership fee, I'm glad to see that it's less than the 3 founding agencies. I just want to have clarity in terms of, I'm understanding it's for a consultant, but is it for a consultant to strictly manage future meetings, or is this consultant also going to play a role in identifying grants and helping fill out those applications? So I just need a little bit more clarity in the roles and responsibilities of the TAC, the consultant. And I think if an agency, for whatever reason, cannot afford the membership, I think we need to provide some level of flexibility. So maybe it's, if needed, if the rate has to drop a little bit, or if they could commit next year. My point is, I don't want to lose people from participating in the TAC if they're unable to pay, because this is the first time we're asking them to provide a financial contribution. Is that correct? The TAC members? Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So I know we
and-
need the money, but I think it needs to just be very clear as to where the money is going to be spent. I'm definitely in support of an annual budget and review. In terms of adding language, I think that should be, I want to have the language to allow the flexibility, but also contingent on the governing body adopting that, because what I'm getting fearful of is there are multiple things we need to address, but I also don't want us to remove ourselves from the mission. And for me personally, the mission is to actually get the projects in the seal and the master plan adopted. That, to me, that's the main reason why we're expanding the JPA. So I don't want to lose sight of that. So I fully acknowledge we need to have some flexibility in order to invite new members. But if I were to quantify, to me, the priority is 90%. We need to adopt this plan, the projects within the plan. And then can you go to the next slides? I think you wanted feedback on a couple other areas. I don't know if we need an audit. I would want to ask our finance director. I'm presuming a budget has to be a certain level to undergo an audit, and I don't know if we meet that standard. So I just want clarity on that, but definitely open to an annual review. And then in terms of the mission and vision, I kind of feel like I'll just keep my comments to my primary focus is to actually get the plan adopted. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are great points. And I see Taylor from the city of Hayward has her hand raised, so she might have some insight on what was just discussed.
Yeah, I can provide some context on why we're requesting the TAC agencies put in a share. The consult, it could be used there's no like hard set on what it could be used, but it could be used to help manage the thing, but it also could be used to hire consultants to help us write grants. So that's what we did with the Oraloma levy project. Is we, as the TAC, put in money to help hire Arcadis to do a like study and help with the grant writing process. And we would like to do more of that moving forward. And so instead of having to piecemeal every time we find one, we rather have a budget that we could just pull from in order to make that. And then in terms of the TAC, the roles of it is really like making collaboration easier on these projects that we are working on in the master plan, and being able to communicate between the different agencies and have a place to talk about the project, so everyone has a voice at the table when we're implementing these projects. And being a bigger agency, as noted by the other trustees, being a bigger agency to go after grant funding and leverage our collaborative environment.
Okay, and then can you answer at this point, the ask of Oraloma in the mosquito district, is it 6,000 or 12,000? Have we clarified what the ask is?
So they would be, because they would be a trustee membership, the ask is 12,000.
Okay. Thank you. And that means they're a voting member as well, correct?
Correct.
Membership, that's part of the governance. You actually have a vote on the body, whereas the TAC members do not. It's duplicative. Some of the members of the governing party or staff are part of the TAC, but we also have members of the TAC team that do not have voting authority, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's a clear distinction as well. So yes, it's more money, but you get to weigh in on these issues. Thank you.
All right.
I think, oh, can I just say, I think something that needs to be included in the term sheet is, the alignment and agreement on the projects that are currently in the master plan. I think that should be spelled out so that there's no, down the line, there's no discussion about, to Elisa's point, that main thing that she wants to do is to make sure that the projects in the master plans get implemented. And I just think that if that is really the mission and the goal, that should be somehow documented through verbiage in the term agreement. So people, when stakeholders sign up, that you don't have to convince them or whatever. They know what they're signing up for. And naturally, as new projects get presented to us, the trustees get the opportunity to vote them up or down. But if the starting point is to implement the projects that is in the current master plan, I think somehow, for me, it would be good to have it as part of the term sheet. Just a thought.
That's a great point. So you're saying make a reference more explicitly in the term sheet to the master plan and implementation of those projects. Okay.
All right. Any other trustees have anything, Eric?
Was there also a question on this, I think maybe another slide with respect to hiring outside counsel to update the JPA?
No, that was my question,
Okay.
but I think it's a legitimate one. Yeah, I mean, I think we get to that, and I think it would also, we could couple that with whether we do an audit or just a general financial statement. And personally, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say I'm really highly in support of that. I think it's best that we get a third party neutral. That way there can be no allegations of conflict of interest. Our city attorney is amazing, but I don't want any member to challenge or think that they were just looking out for Hayward's best interest. So I think it's best that we go with a neutral party.
We could probably do that. And does anybody have any feelings on an audit or a general financial statement? We just need somebody to tell us what we can do on that. I mean, I've been on JPAs that have millions of dollars that they have in their financials and have to account for. I don't think that we're going to, I mean, let's face it, our budget is going to be, well, a minimum of $60,000 come next year. And then hopefully we'll get some TAC members to put up 6,000, but we're not talking about a big number here, and we're not talking about major expenditures. I think Taylor's right. Generally what we've done in the past is with the money we've had, we've authorized some studies, we've done some research, hired a couple consultants, but we're not going to do these projects ourselves. I mean, obviously, we're going to have to start, once we start getting grants and getting things done, we'll have to do that. But I think initially, I think we can, like not spending too much money. I'd like to spend money on protecting the shoreline, not financial reports. But I understand we have to do it the right way. And I think, I think probably the attorney we hired to write this up probably could tell us that, just based on how much we bring in, where we spend it, and how we use it and how we account for it. Any opinions on that?
Well, one of our sources of being able to do some of these projects are going to come from grants. And so we might not be just talking about a small amount of money.
Right.
Oh, initially I was referring to. But yeah, we will cross that bridge. Hopefully we have that success. That sounds like a great goal, to have lots and lots of money and have to account for it all.
That's a great point. And I think that is a question for whatever council ends up, updating the JPA. I'm not sure of what audit requirements there are under state law for JPAs, or if there's, as Trustee Marquez alluded to, a certain funding level or an amount that would trigger an audit rather than just a financial statement. But it looks like Brian Lasco has his hand up.
Thanks, John. It's going to sound like we rehearsed this, but we didn't. That just happens to follow naturally. I just wanted to reinforce that amongst the TAC, I mean, we have it's a great collaborative group that just really operates like a, excuse me, about a brain trust, a professional brain trust to the trustees. But we all just looked ahead positively to when the money starts to flow in and things really start to get busy. It's going to be far busier than any one agency can manage. And so that's why there's an emphasis in the term sheet to an outside consultant, because we could be victims of our own success, and we are going to need an outside consultant to help manage not just the money, but the sheer workload of the grants and things like that. So that's really where we were at the TAC. We're looking ahead with the idea of a consultancy.
That makes sense. Yeah. So we did have four scenarios or questions, and I think, I don't know, I think we all kind of have mentioned, but let's go back over this. So our first question was, or our first task was to say, what do we think of $6,000 for TAC members? Does that seem reasonable? Do you think we can do it? And knowing full well that if it doesn't work, we can lower the price, or if there's lots of influence, or, well, who knows what we're going to get. But does that seem reasonable at this point? And I'll accept a hand up in the air, or a smile, or any type of acknowledgement. I have one acknowledgement. Paul, what do you think?
Well, I think it's a good place to start. And then, but I think as with a lot of the things we're looking at, we're going to have to check back in, and they're going to be moving targets for a while. But I sure hope we can impose on Jackie, because I mean, she's been there, done that. And so she could be a real great resource if she doesn't mind us asking at different times. But
Well,
Well, that was going to be my question. My hand has been up. Jackie, can you weigh in on that? As for two things, as far as the audit for JPAs, as well as what do you think about the ability to get $6,000, for you to participate as a TAC from EBDA?
Well,
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I am.
Happy to weigh in. First of all, I would say I'm very happy to be a resource and a support to this this endeavor however I can. This is a really important organization and EBDA benefits from its success. So happy to help however I can. In terms of the audit requirement, my understanding was that joint powers authorities are required by state law to have audits conducted annually. I know that EBDA does. However, Trustee Marquez raised a good point that there could be some lower dollar threshold for that, and that I don't know the answer to. I think legal counsel would be best to answer that, but it's certainly something to look into. And EBDA's JPA does not go to that level of detail in terms of saying whether or not there's an audit. So one option would be to leave that out of the JPA itself and just decide offline whether that's necessary and or desirable. Remind me what the other question was. I had it and then I lost it.
Oh, the TAC.
Oh, the TAC dues. I don't know whether EBDA as a commission, and certainly you would be weighing in on this, Commissioner Duncan, would support 6,000 for dues. I think there is probably support for some level of financial contribution, but exactly what that level and whether it's half that or of a voting member or some lower level, I think could be considered. But I think there is willingness among the EBDA commission, at least that's the impression I got when we had our meeting on this, that there was a willingness to provide some level of lower financial support than that of the trustees. That said, I think Trustee Marquez's point was important, that there may be some members that would be valuable to have on the TAC that may not be able to contribute, and Alameda County Flood Control comes to mind as an organization that I think we all see as critical to participating, but may not as easily be able to pay the dues. So that's just something for the trustees to consider.
Because in actuality, from Orloma, you would be getting 18,000. Because if our TAC member had to pay the 6,000, and then we pay the 12,000 for our trustee dues. I'm just one member of the board, but that is something to think about.
I think
I
we
jump
need
in?
clarification on that, because I thought the tax was only for, if they don't have a governance person in place, the 6,000 would be kind of what the TAC would play. I don't think it would be both a 12,000 and a 6,000, 6 for the TAC and 12 for to be a voting member. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Dennis, but or John.
No, you're correct. I think what Rita is referring to is that as Orloma being a member of EBDA, they would be kind of doubling down, but EBDA would split it 5 ways, so it would be $1,200 extra that I guess if you're looking at it that way, that Orloma would be paying for EBDA to have a voice.
No, I was thinking of Orloma's voice, and then if we had a TAC representative, that we would have to pay for the TAC person as well. I wasn't even thinking about it.
You pay $12,000, you get the combo. You get to be a voting member, and you get to be
Oh,
a TAC
okay.
member.
I didn't.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
The VIP
Definitely,
package.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have no problem. So I can
Thank you.
support
Thanks
Jackie.
for clearing that up, Paul. That's great.
All
And
right.
if you act today, you get 2 extra gifts.
Okay. I can get Jackie on, okay? Thank you for
So,
that clarity.
You bet. So, okay, so it seems that there was some agreement that we'll try 6,000. We'll try to get extra members. We keep trying to do this, and we'll continue to try, and we'll get the right fit at some point. So there was also a suggestion that maybe we should discuss changing the name, to show our flexibility of our boundaries. And I personally don't have a problem with that. I just we can only go in a couple directions. We can go north or south, right? And I don't know what the TAC was thinking by suggesting that, but does anybody have any opinion about that? Or John, do you know what you're talking about that? I know expanding the boundaries, that would be great. The more people we can get involved and key players would be great. I don't know that we would need to change the name. Geographically, it would remain the same unless we're going up into San Leandro. We're down to where the heck would that be? Union City, Newark, Fremont.
Well, we stretch the boundaries by just throwing in area, the Hayward area, and that's, I think, big enough to kind of cover what our shoreline is. I sort of coming up with some kind of initials or something that comes up with a kind of a funny sounding word or whatever. I think would be better off just staying with Hayward or the Hayward area shoreline.
Yeah, my thoughts would be, I don't care if we can expand, and get more members and more technical expertise and more skills at getting grants and have better chances of success. I'm all for it, and I don't care if we change the name personally.
What, East Bay Shores?
Well, I think that might be a little too big, but who knows? But I think we can, in concept, I'm okay with it. Are the other board members okay with that? Unless there's a plan in effect, I don't know what we're. I don't think anybody's locked into this.
What is the Bay Trail? I mean, I ride the Bay Trail, and I don't think that when I'm on my bike, I'm not thinking that I'm in San Leandro. I'm not thinking that I'm in Hayward or, any of that. So it could be something a little bit more generic. But
Well,
the Bay
there's
Trail goes a long ways, doesn't it? It just doesn't go from the San Leandro Marina to the Interpretive Center.
Well, what about the Bill Lockyer shoreline? I think he's got a trail named after him, I think. I don't know how broad that trail is.
Well, to be clear, here's, I think I can clarify. The San Francisco Bay Trail is 535 miles of trail around the bay. It goes up into Napa County and they really define it incredibly. And Paul, you're right. We've done that with HARD a couple of times, and it was my fault. I got a lot of pressure, but we named the San Francisco Bay Trail has a Bill Lockyer section, which goes right over the top of the Arthur Ems section. Those are 3 trail names on the same trail, but we always like an opportunity to name a trail after somebody that's done good work. So we can discuss this later. This isn't one that's doesn't have to.
I don't care. I mean, I don't mean it that I don't care, but to put more energy in it, I'm not that invested in changing the name.
That's my sentiment. I haven't heard. I think we could revisit this, as we grow, but I think it's hard enough to get people to join our GPA. I don't think it's good branding to be changing our name at this time. So I would hold off on that.
I agree.
Okay, great.
Lessen the confusion. We got to keep it simple at this point.
And so next, we've talked about the audit or a general financial statement. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm just going to try to sum it up, that we all agree that a higher level of expertise would have to make that decision, and that would be the attorney we hire or the legal counsel we hire to kind of draft this thing, or at least review this, and then those recommendations to be made at that point. Did I sum that up correctly, or is there any other points to be made?
No, it sounds about right. I'm sure we're going to have 3 House attorneys going over it first with staff, and then from there we'll have to, like Jackie said, get a neutral attorney to help wrap it up.
Yeah, I think independence is a great thing. Okay, and then the next one would be, what are people's opinions on expanding the mission and vision statement for to include? I personally like the fact that we're going from we're going to focus on sea level rise. Now we're going to expand that a little bit by talking about focusing on climate adaptation. I think, in my opinion, I think it's a good idea. If we have the ability to expand our mission and vision statement, to me, that sounds like we can include more people, and I'm all in favor of that.
Would that be expand, restore the wetlands, or?
Well, I mean, I think it could be any number of things. We talked about, I think Taylor mentioned it, we talk about sea level rise and in the past, and that was tides working and storms hitting us, but flooding on Alameda Creek, flooding in all of our creeks. There's all kinds of things. I mean, we're not going to deal with wildfire down there on the shoreline. Well, in some cases we might, but there's all kinds of threats to the shorelines nowadays. I mean, fortunately,
Not only illegal dumping.
Well, yeah, you're right, Rita, and I don't know to expand it. I was holding back, but the regional parks deals with things like Union Sand. Union Sand used to have their treated effluent placed into what we call our Hayward Marsh, where we had a beautiful marsh, lots of fresh water combined with brackish water, which created this great habitat for endangered species. What are they? Snowy plovers. And we built an island out there, and then, no fault of their own, but as you know, Rita, the Regional Water Quality Control Board changed their discharge standards. And so they found themselves looking at a big amount of money, and they just made a decision, and I agree with it, that they just couldn't do that anymore. They had to go in a different direction of how they were going to treat and discharge. So we're stuck with the Hayward Marsh project, restoring that marsh. I know it's part of the Hayward shoreline. It's East Bay Regional Park's problem, but it is part of the master plan, and it is a priority project for the regional parks. And we're hoping that HASPA would be involved in that too. There's avian botulism, if you want to talk about that, and ducks getting botulism, and even the park district used to really depend upon Mark Taylor, the supervisor down there, really depended on the Sulphur Creek Nature Center, who was their biggest client when this plague would hit these birds. And now Sulphur Creek's not, I don't know if Sulphur Creek's back in business, Paul, or, that's another issue we've got to deal with. And boy, we're starting to deal with feral cats. And I don't know if you've seen the reports in the Coliseum. The regional park district's dealing with feral cats. And it's a public relations nightmare, because if you accept grants to protect endangered species, they never tell you about this, or you don't publicize that when you say, I got $1 million grant to create a habitat for snowy plovers, and everybody's happy. But one of the deals of the provisions of getting that grant is you're going to take care of all the predators, and taking care is a euphemistic term for taking care of the predators. You're going to control the predators. So there are many things we can get into. I don't know if we want to go that far. I don't know. We would need to think about that as a body. We've got plenty of work to do in what we have, but I think that, we always have the potential to expand our vision and mission statement. And, we don't talk too much about recreation on that because we're all, but we have other concerns, infrastructure concerns, but it will lose the Bay Trail and eventually, and we need to talk about that and transportation routes and recreation and the Bay Trail essentially. So does anybody else have an opinion on that?
I have a quick comment, Director Waspy. So in terms of that mission and vision, the term sheet we provided just stated that the mission could include, in the updated JPA, could include climate adaptation and not just sea level rise, and then also other issues such as public health with the inclusion of the mosquito abatement district. And just to consider language in that JPA update to include those kind of expanded focus areas. So I think that's what the kind of guidance we were looking for if we wanted to add language in the term sheet to inform that future JPA, to have those, those expanded responsibilities or issues as something that the JPA focuses on. And then did we also want to include some language on the master plan and specifically implementation of the master plan projects as well?
How are you guys envisioning improving public health? I know you have the statement about the mosquito abatement, but how is that? How do you?
So
How would you measure? What would be the metric that we could demonstrate that we did that?
That's a great question, and I'll let Erica Castillo speak since that is
Okay.
nowhere near my.
Because when I think about improving, you must have a baseline.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we don't necessarily need the word improving there, but to have public health as part of our mission. And I think obviously for mosquito abatement, our focus is on the control of mosquitoes as vectors. But for park districts, it would be in relation to recreation.
Yeah.
For cities, it would also be in relation to flooding. For sanitary districts, obviously public health is a reason why we have sanitary districts. So that's why I was going with the broad term of including public health in our mission. So it kind of ties us all together with that shared interest there. And it also was a recommendation from our legal counsel in reviewing the JPA that something be in there that ties us into this association and really clearly spells out our need to be members of this organization. But I do feel we all have that tie.
I love it, but when you talk about improving, to me, it means that we have to show metrics to show how we have improved it and what have we specifically done to do that. But I do know that Orloma is about public health and making sure that, the wastewater and the solid waste that we're responsible for is handled correctly. So we're not, creating an environment where people can get ill and get all kinds of diseases. But
I think that's a good point, that the wording on that does need to be clear. And I want public health included, but maybe, you don't want to say improving or anything that requires a metric.
Yeah. Maybe maintain or ensure. Yeah, we could play around
Ensuring.
with
Yeah, that sounds great.
Chair, I do want to do a time check. A handful of us have another meeting at 5. So I don't know. We've got like 20 minutes. I don't know how much more we need to cover. Do we have? I'm not tracking the agenda. I apologize. Just wanted to.
Well, I think what we've done is, I think we're almost there. We've the 4 subjects that were brought up to us to discuss, we've done. I would like to, if I may, unless anybody's got anything else to add on this, I would like to say the entire document. Does anybody have any comments on the entire document or questions on the entire document or additions to the entire document? And hearing none, I'll start off because I think maybe if I may start off, I just want to say that you know, I looking right from the top, the purpose, I like the fact that we're moving from sea level rise to climate adaptation. I really like the fact that under the terms, the coordinating authority is going to rotate every 3 years. 5 years, in my opinion, was pretty onerous. You put a lot of pressure on some staffs. And I think it's good to meet with new staff members from different agencies. And now we'll be able to spread it out even more so there won't be that much of a burden. But I truly appreciate the thought of that. And that's good. I think under governance, I think Rita made a very good point. I think we need to define everybody's roles right out front. Just say, you know, what the governance people are going to do, what the trustees are expected to do, and what their goals and objectives are. And then with the TAC, I think the TAC people know it a little better than we do, but we can do the same thing for them. You know, waiving the fees and all the other stuff that we talked about are in this document. I think it's all great. And I think under the under the powers, I like the fact that Trustee Marquez said, you know, we need an annual budget and review for sure. I mean, if we're going to collect monies and we're going to you know, hire consultants and things like that, we need a way to review that and to have a budget that people can look at and see what we've done. So I appreciate that. Under finance, I tend to agree with the 12,000 annually and the 6,000 for TAC members. I agree with all the everything. Any changes would be by a unanimous vote, because there are large, you know, obviously if you look at this agency, there are giant agencies and there are small agencies, and we have to, you know, have some equality along the way there. Other than that, I love the document and I appreciate the work that everybody did, and I appreciate all the additions that the trustees added. Any trustees' comments? Alyssa, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Sorry. The only concern I have under governance, and I lost it, sorry, but I read somewhere that any changes made to the JPA require a unanimous vote. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
I think legally we could say that. Majority vote, maybe. I don't, is that commonplace? I mean,
they do it in the UN, I know that, but I don't know. We obviously would have to ask that, and I think that was a well, you know, history was that there's a big agency, there's a couple of giant agencies, and there's a small one, and then to impose our will based on the fact that we have such an ability to pay, and I'm referring to the East Bay Regional Park District, was not the case in some other agencies. But you know, once again, let's rehash this. Let's think about that.
so I guess my only clarifying question is, this is a draft form. We have not adopted it, but
Right.
we are going to seek outside counsel to help finalize this. Obviously, every voting member's respective organization will have a time to weigh in. And then is the expectation to officially vote on it in July, or do we have more time? I'm just not clear on the timeline.
That is a good question. I mean, both questions, the first being the voting, and Jackie just put some good information in the chat. And that could be changed to majority voting as well.
Well,
and in terms of,
I would want council to weigh in on that. I think we
Yeah.
need to be briefed on that, but
Okay.
it just feels like there's a lot to accomplish in less than 2 months. I think the focus should be hiring outside counsel, getting input from each respective agency. And if that could be done by July, great, but I don't want to rush it. I'd rather get it right. So I'm open to being flexible on the timeline.
that's great. And I think the intent was to bring back a more final version just of the term sheet. I think the hiring of the outside counsel was more for, you know, either updating that existing JPA or writing a new one. So are you suggesting we hire outside counsel just for the term sheet? or have a more detailed review for in each of our agencies councils.
So I think the JPA, the council needs to be hired for neutrality. But I think it's just good business practice that our own respective council review it.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't want to complicate things by just think, we basically have to cover.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was just a suggestion to go forward in July with a more final version. We could just have that be another discussion in July after each agency's councils do a more detailed review of this draft term sheet.
I think the due diligence it'll pay off in the long run if we take the time to do that. Thank you.
So Jonathan, now that you're on the hot seat, can I ask a technical question? So it says changes to JPA require unanimous vote of all parties and representatives. What do we do now? Is it unanimous vote? I think it is.
Now for the draft term sheet.
Well, here's the deal. On July 14th, when we come with this term sheet, is it going to take a unanimous vote to accept this, or is it going to take a majority vote?
So the term sheet would only guide the future JPA, not this JPA, or not the current JPA
So that's
agreement.
my question. What is it
Yeah,
now?
my understanding, Dennis, is we're just extending our existing JPA. So we're still a joint powers. And then later on, sometime in July, August, whatever, we can start really drilling down on the JPA that we want to have going forward.
Okay.
That's correct.
So one
Is that-
thing I shared with my board, I mean, before we, I would hate for it to be a final document and then, the members of my board say, this is not working for us. So when are you recommending me share this document with my other board members?
My understanding is that this is still a work in progress, but we
That's
wanted
correct.
to be in compliant. We need to, we're due to sunset or whatever at the end of June. So
Is this what you guys are operating under now?
No, so sorry, just to clarify this whole process. The draft term sheet is for the JPA that will be adopted in 2023.
That's what I thought.
In the current JPA will be extended for one year starting on June 30th. It sounds like in July at that scheduled July board meeting, it sounds like we could continue this discussion on this term sheet. I feel some of the members would like to have their council review it, just the term sheet, just to make sure it's compatible with their agency's requirements and all that. So it sounds like that's the direction we're headed in.
And just for your
If I'm
note,
understanding
our
correctly.
JPA does require, EPDAS requires a unanimous voting to change certain, for certain decisions, including JPA revisions. Thank you for that, Jackie. I knew that because that's why it was so laborious to finish it. All of the agencies were looking out for their own part of the world.
yeah, but I hope we're not wedded to the 2023 as our goal to change and have a new JPA. We could do that at any time when we feel that it's been vetted by all three agencies and it can be changed then.
Yeah,
Sooner.
that's just, we allowed that time, just so we have the time in case there was we wanted to do more workshops or more meetings. But once, we have a term sheet and the council writes a JPA, the JPA can be updated as far as I understand.
Yeah. I don't believe it's going to take a year to get this thing all hammered out.
Okay,
not.
so
I'm an optimist.
I'm going to respect people's deadlines here. So the next steps are, I think we've given you some fairly decent information here or some suggestions. I assume the TAC will meet again. At some point, I don't know if you guys want to do this. I won't say a word, I promise, but I would love to be invited to a TAC meeting to hear how you guys make this sausage. And if you're willing to invite other trustees, I'd like to hear the process. And then, like we say, this isn't going to take effect until end of June next year. So if we come in July 14th with your proposals and everybody has time, I would suggest we don't have to bring it before your boards. I mean, it would be nice, but then or we can, if we think or if the TAC feels there's going to be some debate, we can just debate on July 14th again, and then bring it at any time. And if we need, if you need to convince your board, or if you don't have a desire to convince your board, or if your board's not convinced, or your board would like to change this, then we can have a special meeting. There's nothing to say we can't have a special meeting to work these things out. As long as it gets approved by June 30th of next year, we're good to go. And I think, I don't want to beat it to death, but I think further discussion is always good, and other ideas are always good. I don't know how my other fellow trustees feel, but I think that would be the template, in my opinion, for the next steps. Any comments?
No, I agree.
I agree with that approach. I think this was helpful to have our future members present. It was a good dialogue. So I think it makes sense to move a little bit more methodically. We don't have to be rushed. We have a year. It won't take us a year, though.
Yeah. And just to clarify, the term sheet, is essentially just a guidance document as we develop that JPA agreement, and that future updated or new JPA agreement, that'll have to go before your boards. So it's not like, say we move forward with what this version of the term sheet or another one, the JPA will still have to be signed and adopted by each trustee agency's board. So just to clarify, at the July 14th meeting, we'll come back with the next version of the term sheet and continue the discussion. Is that what I'm hearing?
And
Okay.
then after that, I can present it. Okay.
Okay.
And what Dennis had suggested, sometime be a fly on the wall at a TAC meeting, and just not be speakers, but just listeners. That's not what you meant, Dennis?
Oh, that's exactly what I meant. I'm looking at John. I got
Yeah.
Time.
I will
John, where's
send,
Erica? I can't
If
see
you have the
anybody.
time.
that's a great idea.
You guys hash
We'll
that
share
out.
those
It would,
invites, yeah.
it would be fun. We'll be good, I promise. And before we leave, I want to apologize to everybody. I can't see everybody's window, and especially when there were presentations. So if you had your hand up, I apologize. I wasn't trying to be rude. This is difficult for me, as you can all tell. Anyway, so our next meeting is July 14th. We usually ask for agenda items, but if I'm not mistaken, this was a special meeting, so we do have agenda items. At some point, I would like to think to welcome our new members, and maybe even recruit some more new members. It would be nice to show them the entirety of the Hayward shoreline. It's a small area, but there's so many projects in that master plan, and to get your head around what's going on in that master plan, I think would be wonderful if we could have a field trip or an orientation, call it anything you want, but get down there on the shoreline, see what it's really like. Because, there are some agencies that Rita made a good point. Rita's agency is involved with making pure, clean water come out of plant and discharge into the bay, and they do an excellent job of it, and the public health is their best thing. But the recreation component maybe is a little more intangible. If I think we bring people down on the shoreline, see the Bay Trail, see people having healthful hiking, being outdoors, all the benefits that I think have been quantified recently on being outdoors, being healthy, hiking, exercising. I think it's almost not intangible anymore. We buy it in the Park District every day. So just in the future, maybe we could get a meeting down on the shoreline with some potential, with our new members and maybe some potential other members.
Thank you for the invitation. I learned a lot today. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pleasure having you all here, and this is going to be a lot of fun, I think. I did promise.
Dennis, what is your definition of fun? Come on now. I'm sorry.
You don't want to know.
Point. Hiking on the shoreline is my definition of fun, but anyway, I promised another public comment session. So I don't know if there's anybody from the public, but we want to give everybody that opportunity. Any staff members, any trustees, any new potential or oncoming new trustees, anything else? If not, for the good of the order, we're going to get you out of here for your 5 o'clock meeting.
Thank you.
Hearing nothing, we're
Yep.
adjourned. Thank you very much, you guys. Take care.
Thank you.
Great job.